Good morning, church. So when I was first coming in this morning, I was on the edge of my seat because last time I was up here, Brother Watkins walked in and it did it to me for real. But I've been on the edge of my seat since we got here today. But today I'm bringing a lesson: building faith through each other. I'm gonna say it again: building faith through each other. So what is faith? If you look up what faith is online, I know you guys aren't fans of Google, but on Google, it says faith is having trust or confidence in someone or something. So what's the biblical definition of faith? Hebrews 11:1. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. So what is faith? Faith is taking God for his word and knowing he won't forsake or fail us. Faith is also not knowing what tomorrow holds, but knowing who holds tomorrow. To build faith, we have to understand what makes our faith weak and how detrimental it is to have weak faith. So why is the faith so weak? The faith is so weak because we often take for granted what God has done for us. We don't share what God has done for us to share and encourage those around us. We oftentimes find ourselves in similar situations with each other, and just by sharing what you've been through, you can help others who are going through the same thing. God has brought us together so we can help those around us not only solve their problems, but look to God for influence and solutions. So when the faith is weak, you may experience feelings of hopelessness. You live with no guidance and a lot of uncertainty. And our church doesn't grow when we're living hopeless, unguided, and in uncertainty. So what builds faith and hope? Faith is built through the stories we share with each other, through the stories we share with those around us, sharing our testimonies and what God has brought us through. This often calls for us sometimes to step out of what we may be familiar to or out of our comfort zone. We often also take credit for fixing our problems and jumping over any hurdles we face that we received the ability to do so from God. It's important we give God the credit and when he fixes the problems that we face on this Christian journey, because we know without him, it's not possible. There's a popular lyric that many artists use. They use this phrase, it's called, they got it out the mud. So looking at that, this reference is basically saying, you started with nothing. You turn nothing into something or making something out of nothing. Us as Christians, it's important for us to realize no matter what we've been through, that we didn't get it out the mud. God got us out the mud. So my first chapter, I'm gonna paraphrase this, but I'm coming from Luke 7, where the lady, she washed Jesus' feet. She met him at the dinner and she washed his feet. So this lady, she heard stories about Jesus and then made the efforts to learn more about him and meet him. So here we go with the somebodies. So somebody heard, which in this case would be the lady. Somebody took action, which would be the lady also. And somebody had to step out their comfort zone to tell their story of what Jesus did for them. Also, it's important we recognize who we surround ourselves with. So everybody knows who Kobe Bryant is. Win by all means necessary, MVP, whatever you think of, he had it. Kobe, he also trained with other players, Jason Tatum, Devin Booker, Luka, Giannis. These are all MVPs, been to the finals, won it all. These are all players. It's all in who you hang with. You hang with quitters and doubters and people that quit when times get hard. You know what you do? You adopt it. You quit when times get hard. If you hang around people that persevere and that look to God for answers when things get hard, you'll be more likely to overcome and preserve the things that you're going through. So on my little short endeavor on my ministry journey, one of my first biggest struggles was finding my helping hand. Now you might wonder what I mean by helping hand, but I thought, what can I say to people that would stick to them or help them on their Christian journey? You know how most people have their before Christ era where they did any and everything you could imagine. And I was like, dang, I don't have one of those. It's like, what am I gonna do? So it's like everybody has their but God moment, but where does mine come from? So little funny story. So it's crazy. It's happened about 2 weeks ago. So I'm with Milton. We're at his house. So mind you, his house has a little like island in the middle kind of thing. So what I tend to do is when I start thinking, I start pacing and walking around. So I'm walking around a little island. I'm just going. Milton, he's sitting at the table eating his chicken. I know he not, I'm waiting for him to ask me what's wrong, but I know he not gonna ask because he don't want to be up all night. So then finally he gave in. He was like, what's wrong? I was like, man, I'm going through it. I'm like, Brother Newton done been through this. Brother Stewart had the cabbage. Like, where's mine? What do I do? Where, like, whatever. I was thinking like I might have to just make something up. That's gonna have to be my testimony. So he told me, he was like, you know, it's crazy. I've been listening to this podcast. And I was like, okay. So what you mean by that? Like, what's going on in the podcast? In the podcast, if you're like me and you don't have that but God moment, it's still very important to share how God has preserved you and kept you from those things. If not for his grace, we wouldn't have made it thus far without going, even though you haven't been through some hardships and troubled times, those around you may have experienced. It's also important to realize that if you haven't been troubled, don't blink, because it could be coming in the near future. We often overvalue those situations we put ourselves in and God gets us out of, but we undervalue the things we can't see that he's preserved us from. It's also important we realize that the church is a hospital for the sick. It's important we realize that we are all sick and we all need the grace and mercy from God to keep going. You don't have to be in a third world country or in a horrible situation to need God. In Acts 10 with Cornelius was a great man, but he still needed to be taught and obey the gospel. You can have your world life together. You can have all the money, economically stable. Your family could be strong. You can have perfect health. But if there's no relationship with God, you are sick. All other things mean nothing and will mean nothing when you come to that. We also have to strengthen each other, sometimes in prayer or encouragement, through always. In Luke 5, we hear about the man who was lowered through the roof to meet Jesus. These men realized that this man they were bringing to Jesus was in need of some extra help. This applies to us where we need to be alone to have those connections with people where we can identify when someone needs extra help and we can give them that prayer, comfort, and guidance that God calls to give. Because if one is weak, we are all weak. And we don't progress forward till we move strongly as one unit for the Lord. So coming to my close, I ask you to take chances stepping out of your comfort zone. I ask you to exalt the good works of God. I ask you to come forth and share what God has brought you through so those around you may be strengthened and encouraged through your testimony. Thank you.